Welcome back, everybody, to Let's Talk About Sleep. We're going to be answering questions today, so thank you for everybody who interacted over the last month or so. There's definitely going to be at least 2, maybe 3, maybe even 4 videos, depending on how fast I get through these. A lot of questions, which is great, so keep them coming. And as I always say, these videos are for education only. So with that being said, I'm going to get right into this, okay? I'm not even going to mention the book, which is over my shoulder there. Okay, so let's get going. So the first comment is from on my sleep medication usage is decreasing video, which came out a few weeks ago. Michael writes, Doctor, thank you. Do you feel like Lunesta is bad long term? It can be. Lunesta, ambien, medications like this, there is literature to suggest that they can worsen memory. There may be some addiction. They can make sleep apnea worse. So if I can avoid them, I try to. Okay, but in some cases, they may be the only medication that could work for somebody, and I think it's worse to not sleep than to have these potential risks. Only med to give a little relief sometimes. Tried everything else. Do you feel mirtazapine is safe for sleep? God bless you. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, like I said, I mean, there are some cases where you have to use these medications because other things have not worked. Okay, so mirtazapine is kind of a really strong antidepressant / antipsychotic, if memory serves correctly. We use it in the sleep world for pretty severe cases where somebody is very, very anxious or really, psychologically impaired. It can work though, okay? And mirtazapine does not have the same long-term risk as far as dementia and things of that nature that Lunesta does. Doesn't mean it's better. There are other risks with medications like that, such as weight gain and other changes that can occur. But it's one of these things where it's like, there's risks and benefits to everything. Okay, so what I would say is, in short, if Lunesta worked for you, that may be the right thing. But what's always important, though, Michael, is you want to make sure you're ruling out other conditions. So things like sleep apnea, right, which can cause you to wake up throughout the night. It's very important that things like that are also potentially addressed. Okay? So good luck to you. On my trazodone part 2 video, Sons writes, my dog was prescribed trazodone today for his anxiety. Yeah, you see that sometimes. I've taken it for insomnia, made my eyes red and they hurt, didn't put me to sleep. I haven't heard that, but, any medication can cause anything. What I have found, though, with trazodone and medications like that is if somebody does not take the right dose for them, let's say they take a dose that's too low, what may happen is the medication is not doing anything at all, and the person is just lying there with their underlying anxiety, and then the medication's not working, so it becomes kind of almost like a vicious spiral where it's like, okay, this medication should be working for me, it's not. And then the anxiety ramps up and then they don't get to sleep at all. It's not because the medication was doing it, it's just the dosage wasn't high enough, if that makes sense. I try to avoid all drugs as I think playing with those receptors long term is just a bad idea. Cannabis and benzos have helped me the most. What I say about cannabis is, we don't know the long term effects of that. We do know that it inhibits REM sleep, which is when we dream. So long term, having cannabis on board, if you're long term inhibiting REM sleep, what's the consequences of that? We don't know. Okay, but is it better to not sleep? I think it's better to sleep, but again, we don't know the long term consequences. And benzos, like I said before, are addictive. The withdrawal from SSRI I found from my anxiety was awful. I felt like water in my head. Yeah, SSRIs can be tough to come off of. It sounds like there's a lot of anxiety here, which definitely needs to be addressed. There's other ways to do it, but it sounds like your experience with trazodone though may have just been because the dose wasn't high enough. That's my opinion, but definitely you want to talk to a psychiatrist if you haven't already. Thank you for your question. On my REM sleep and sleep apnea video, Doreen writes, hi, doctor. Question on REM, increased dreaming related to SNRI use with sleep apnea and CPAP. I'm the opposite of what you mentioned here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. My sleep doctor had prescribed working on my depression and anxiety. Okay, good. Some chronic pain issue. Remembering my dreams. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Doreen, thank you for your question. If you have sleep apnea, right, and it's well controlled with CPAP, which it sounds like your story is here. There's other reasons why you may be tired. Okay, and you kind of touched on them: depression, anxiety, pain. Those are big three things that can make somebody tired. Regardless of sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is just one part of that puzzle. Okay, so what I would say is those things have to be addressed. Okay, the combination of Cymbalta and trazodone. I mean, I would let a psychiatrist kind of, I would defer to them on that because those medications can interact in some ways. But usually, though, you want to make sure though that you're taking care of those underlying problems. What we can do, though, in a case like this is if somebody is still on CPAP and they're very good with it and they're still tired despite all these other things being addressed, what I may do is have the person do an overnight test, right, with CPAP on, and then the next day do an MSLT, which is a mean sleep latency test or a multiple sleep latency test to determine the level of sleepiness. Okay, so what can happen is we do an overnight test and then a nap test the next day. That might kind of help to determine if the problems you're experiencing are sleepiness or they are fatigue. Because fatigue is much different than sleepiness. Sleepiness, we can rule it out as far, or we can rule it in as far as things like hypersomnia or narcolepsy or residual sleepiness from sleep apnea. Whereas fatigue has many other causes, okay, including depression, anxiety, and pain. So it sounds like there's a big mix of stuff here that's going on, but you're doing well with the CPAP. I definitely would continue that on. As far as medications go, yeah, you may have to. This may be one of those situations where you kind of need your team to all communicate.
Call from one.
Sorry, robocalls, the bane of my existence. But you may want to have your team of doctors, the pain management, psychiatry, whoever else, sleep specialist, be on board and discuss what would be the best thing for you. Okay? Good question. So Sherry writes on my question answered video from last month, thank you for answering my question about coming off ambien. You said the weaning process is tapering off, blah, blah, blah. However, if the person is taking ambien CR, it says to not crush or chew the pill. So I'm thinking that the pill, cutting it or crushing it would interfere with the release rate. Yeah, so good, great question, Sherry. So the Ambien CR and medications like that, the way the coating is on the pill, it's kind of it gets broken down by the stomach in a very controlled way, which is where the CR or the time release comes from. The Ambien and Ambien CR are the same medication. It's just that the CR has that coating, which is why you really can't cut it. So you're absolutely right. What I would say in a case like that is you may have to be a little creative with it. So Ambien CR comes in 12.5 and 6.25 pills. If you're on 12.5, what I would do then is try to get you down to 6.25, again, slowly. And what I mean by that is maybe do 1 day of 12.5, 1 day of 6.25, 1 day of 12.5, 1 day of 6.25, and then go to 1 day of 12.5, 2 days of 6.25, 1 day, and then go like that, where you're spacing it out, eventually getting to the point where it's like maybe once a week you're using 12.5 and then switch all of them to 6.25 thereafter. Okay, that's one way of doing it. The other way we do it would be to just cut it in half and say, look, okay, it's not gonna have that sustained release, but it is still gonna help me to get to sleep. And then maybe what you do is you maybe take, if you're gonna cut it in half, maybe take one at bedtime, one in the middle of the night, one half at bedtime, one half in the middle of the night. And then maybe down the road, you don't need that initial one, or you don't need the one in the middle of the night, and then that's kind of how you can wean down. So it's not perfect. It's not a perfect science by any stretch of the imagination, and you're absolutely right. The way it's designed, it's hard to kind of do that, but there are still ways to wean down. So I hope that helps. On my question and answer, Scott writes, thank you. Thanks again, doctor. No problem, Scott. Thanks for the thank you. Okay, and then on my Also on that question answered, Ryan writes, your QA videos are great because you get into specific detail or cover a topic you haven't before. Would you consider adding the topics discussed within the videos to the description? Yeah, so I'm going to do that. Thank you, Ryan. I'm going to do that starting with these videos. I'm going to list the topics that we talked about, and then I'll put that in the description box below the video itself. So if you asked a question this month, you'll be able to see kind of where they are. Because like I said, this series for this month is probably going to be about 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 videos, depending on how fast I go. So thank you for that suggestion. Look in the description box going forward. Okay, and I think I'm going to stop there because there's a lot more questions to go, and I don't want to make these videos too long. But thank you for everybody who interacted. Hopefully, you got something out of this. Keep asking the questions. A lot of times, though, I will say that sometimes the questions that are asked are very, very specific to a person, and it's kind of hard to answer them in a kind of forum like this. Okay, but I do the best I can. And what I would say again, as I always say, these videos are for education. Give you something to think about when you talk to your other doctors. Okay? So until next time, which will be very soon, sleep well.